Hey everybody, happy Wednesday night. Today is October 2nd, 2024. We are across the pitch post-game show. I am Mike Barrera. I'm joined by my two handsome friends, Todd Lewis and Jose Nunez. Not smiling too much tonight though, guys. It's one that we have a lot to talk about, and it's not gonna it's this is a safe space tonight, gentlemen. This is just we're gonna let it all out and just really vent it out. But Jose, I'll go to you first. I did Todd. I think Jose's on the presser still. So Todd, I'll go to you first. How are you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing good, Jose. Can we talk about you said two handsome fellas? Can we
I
talk
did.
about Jose's new profile picture? I mean, oh my god, what a stud! Like, whoo!
I opened that in
I don't
public.
even
Like,
recognize
whoa.
the guy. I mean, he looks completely different than he does right here on the live. So I'm like, okay, Jose. I mean, he's upped
Clean.
his game. I was so used to his Twitter profile where he had the blue Union background, I think, and now he's looking all professional, all serious. I mean, he's done a complete 360 on us. It's like, all right, time to get serious, guys. Look at me, Mister Philadelphia Union here, and yeah, I think there's only one handsome guy here, and that's Jose Nunez. And I think
Standards have
all the love
been.
you got on that profile picture, I think, tells you everything you need to know.
That's right, Todd. I agree with you 100%. Jose, your thoughts on that?
No, thank you. Kind comments. Photoshop. Some people are masters at Photoshop. Obviously, the work that they did. But man, what a game! Did I expect it to be 2-1? No, I expected a loss. Not even with the Union scoring. Frankly, I thought it was going to be 2-0, and they were very close to even going ahead with a couple of chances of Nate Harrell's doing and also missing, where it would have been easier for him to hump it in than it was to try to head it in, apparently. So yeah, what a bummer. I think we can dig deep in a variety of different ways that we unfortunately probably should and have to, really. I don't even know where to begin, Mike. I'll turn it over to you.
Valerie starts the show by saying, "Getting better with age, Jose."
Agreed.
And then Eric, of course, has to bring you back down to earth. Jose, professional. Those words have never been uttered together. And you know what? That's not entirely false, Eric. Let's just go with initial reactions. I mean, this is a very serious result here for the Union season. They really need to pull out at least a point, considering everything that's going around in the league right now with other scores that are currently being played and just finished tonight. My initial reaction was deflated, kind of disgusted, and really just not surprised. I mean, that's kind of how I was processing my whole evening. Todd, what were your thoughts? The game's finally over. Reactions on the result itself.
Yeah, I can't tell if you're talking about the Philadelphia Union or the Baltimore Orioles because that's exactly how I feel about the Baltimore Orioles. And I told you guys
Go
before we
Phils, baby.
look, I would love to hop on the bandwagon and give you guys support, but I feel like if I do that, then I'm just gonna bring it down. So I don't want to be the reason why things don't go the way that you guys deserve them to go in the playoffs. So I'll stand away in a distance and silently cheer for you guys. But yeah, it's a terrible Wednesday watching what happened with the Baltimore Orioles losing to a not so great Kansas City Royals team, and then that game was wrapping up when the Union game was starting, and you watch the first 20 minutes on this game. I think Orlando had 7 shots compared to the Unions, and it's like, okay, this game could easily be 2-3-0 right now to Orlando City, and somehow the Union, like Jim Curtin said so many times in the past, they're bending, but they're not breaking, and that's exactly what was happening. It's like, how much further can we see these guys bend before they break and let in a goal? And somehow they get into the half tied 0-0, and they make a substitution of Luis Muriel, who hurt the Union back in May. I believe that's when these two teams first played the season, scored 2 goals in the game against the Union, and gets 2 assists tonight. So the Union just they didn't look like they wanted to be in Orlando, to be frank. They look like, yeah, we showed up because that's what our schedule says we have to do. We have a game, and honestly looked like they didn't want to play tonight, and somehow, some way, they wind up not conceding a single goal in the first half. And I think maybe that caught the coaching staff, the players, by surprise. Like, wow, we played a horrible half and we're still somehow in this game. And and I don't know how you guys feel. Like, even when Orlando went up 2-0, it's like, the Union somehow steadied the ship and stopped giving up chances to Orlando. They get the goal with Quinn Sullivan, and then you see the two chances there by Nathan Harriel, and it's like somehow, some way, these guys still have a chance to be in this game. And just like we saw back in the first game when Daniel Gazza gets a late penalty and Galese makes a save, you have 2 free headers with Nathan Harriel, and you can't put them in the back of the net.
Jose, before I shoot to you, Kyle joins us saying, I don't want to say the guys didn't look like they wanted to win, but they definitely looked like they didn't have any hope that they would. And that's kind of going along with what you're saying, Todd. They just looked like they were sleepwalking at times. Jose, same question to you. Your thoughts, reactions, and definitely I want to hear your thoughts about the lineup because that's a really big hot topic issue tonight. Quinn Sullivan, Nathan Harriel, both on the bench tonight.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it to Todd and texting some other friends who were watching, just like, not as deep into it as we are covering the team, but just, friendly bystanders who watch this team for honestly the sake of chatting with me. But man, from minute 2 or 3, it felt like body language was just absolute dog shit, right? In terms of, folks like Alejandro Bedoya, pissing the ball away and sort of putting his arms up, and Daniel Gazdag doing the same and probably doing it a hell of a lot more. Even catching, Jim, who is a coach and should be showing, his disapproval of things, catching him on screen, sort of like what are we doing? Like shaking his head at his players. So it was sort of writing itself as it was developing in terms of what the performance was going to be like. And there's no more damning evidence than Jim saying, this is what exactly did he say, Todd? I sort of transcribed it a little bit, but it was something along the lines of like, we just did not match a tough night all around. Orlando came out fast, and for the magnitude of the game, we did not match their intensity. That is pretty damning for a team that needs to. Jim claims 4 points will do it. Maybe that's the case. It feels like 4 points plus help, so that should probably feel like 6 or 7 at this point. Just a piss poor performance, and it is what it is, right? I mean, Gazdag passing the ball back by accident in the first couple of minutes, Bedoya sort of losing track of the ball and almost going onto a counter. If anything, and I think Todd mentioned it as I was cutting a quick clip, the Union, very fortunate to go into half 0-0, never mind not losing by 3 or 4, frankly. The amount of chances, and honestly, I'm not a big XG or expected goals, expected assists guy. I really am not. But I would go ahead and guess that Orlando had a crazy high XG considering the situations that they found themselves in where they should have scored. Though you could say the same for the Union considering Nate Harriel's late misses there towards the tail end of the game. But Todd, I think we may have to dust off that clip. Jim sort of alluded to it. Teams down deep on that table, not really deserving to be in the playoffs. Do coaches coaching those teams deserve to coach in the MLS?
Some of them do, some of them don't. I mean, we want to go coach by coach. Sure, we can. We know Frank Klopas isn't going to be with Chicago Fire. You see the reports that Greg Berhalter is one of the finalists for the technical director and the head coach role there. So we already know Chicago. New England, I'd imagine they'd still go with Caleb Porter. DC United, Troy Lezane's first year there. They'll keep him. Atlanta United need a new coach, so they'll be looking for a new coach. Nashville, they've got the new manager in BJ Callahan, so they're not going to get a new manager. Toronto essentially has a new manager this season, so I don't think we see honestly too many chances, and there's no way in hell the Union move on from Jim Curtin. Even though I know I said that in my prediction show that managers that don't make the playoffs in a format where potentially everybody makes, I mean it's Jim Curtin's not going to get fired. But to your point about XG, Jose, was 2.84 for Orlando, and then Philadelphia Union 2.08. I mean, there's 2 huge chances with Nathan Harriel, the headers, free headers. And this is a guy, and Jim Curtin said it's kind of weird. He's our best header of the ball, best aerial player. And for him not to hit the target on 1, let alone 2 chances, I was shocked by that. And I don't know. I put out a tweet and said, the first miss by Nathan's a pretty good representation of how this season's went. It's what it comes down to. It's like you have the ball on a silver platter, just waiting for you to tap it in, and then somehow you fumble it at the last second. And it's I don't know. I mean, Jim said, right, you can make the argument that teams 8 through the bottom don't deserve to be in the playoffs this year. And he's right. I mean, I was texting a friend saying it's a joke that the Union is still potentially in the playoffs, where I don't think they're deserving of being in it. Yes, they've looked great at times or good at times, but there's been a lot of times that summer period you don't have Andre Blake. It was disappointing where the Union just shot way too many points. And Matt DeGeorge actually put out a really good tweet and said, don't remember this game. I don't know if you guys saw this. Don't remember tonight's game against Orlando City. But look, you had 1 point all season against Chicago, 1 point against Montreal, 1 point against Toronto, 2 points against Atlanta, 1 point against Charlotte. Yeah, not good enough. I mean, teams that are all the way at the bottom of the table, you picked up the bare minimum points. And it just hasn't been good enough for the Union, where they should have got points against the worst teams.
There's a lot of talking points. These comments are great so far. Everybody who's chiming in. A lot of people questioning Jim Curtin's tactics. Obviously, the pairing of Olivier and
Jose and I talked about that today.
Olivier and Bedoya as well. The one interesting factor that Liam brings up here is the French speaking thing, which I saw people kind of float around on Twitter as well. I know we kind of talked about this beforehand. Excuse me. Danley is obviously, doesn't speak English. Ali and Olivier can speak French. Is that controlling the roster for choice today? But really, when it comes down to it, you're in a playoff push. I think somebody mentioned how, I'm going to bring up Ali's comment. Olivier and Ali were a good partnership on the road. That's why he started them. It's a playoff. It's basically the playoffs right now, for all intents and purposes, right? You play your best players. And without question, besides Andre Blake, Quinn Sullivan has been the Union's best player, if not top 2 best players on the field every single match this past, month or so. He's just been a difference maker on the right-hand side. I don't think you can make an argument that he doesn't start this game. There's no shot in my eyes why he shouldn't start. Also, another point that Jeffrey brings up, the amount of games that have been taken back after we score goals is crazy. I know Curtin wants to probably say, like, hey, you can't win a game late. You shouldn't you shouldn't be in the playoffs. Well, you also dropped 25 points this year? What's the number at now? It has to be close to 30 at least, right? I'm sure Todd, I don't know if you have been tracking it or not. But it's just unacceptable. And that's how it's been all year. And listen, also, Todd, to your point with the playoff picture, this is exactly why I didn't want the playoffs to be expanded to the extra team, because it gives a chance for a team that's really not deserving to be in the playoffs a chance to be in the playoffs. It just waters down the regular season. And the way it was before was perfectly fine. Now, Jose and Todd, we do have a special guest. We have Vince in the studio waiting. He was at the game, right, Jose? Okay. So we're going to get firsthand experience of what it was like in Orlando. So I'm going to bring Vince in a second. Hold on. Let me just get him on here.
Vince has got that hotel Wi-Fi, so let's hope he paid for the upgraded package.
Can you hear me?
It's perfect. Yeah. How you doing, Vince?
I'm great. I'm glad you brought me on to talk about the Union 2 victory on Sunday and nothing else.
Listen, the Union 2 are saving grace besides the Phillies. So tell me your experience tonight, Vince. What was it like down there?
So I will say this stadium is nice. You could actually walk down streets with, restaurants and stuff. So we actually stopped at one there, and it was actually with a whole bunch of Orlando fans. Really empty. It's a Wednesday night. However, I've been kind of surprised at the amount of teams just that I saw even on social media that didn't fill their stadium with the importance of this game. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I'm a mess. It was hot.
You look great.
It was hot. And I got to hold this camera because there's no flattering angle I can pitch this phone at. I will say this. Really, I enjoyed the wall. I love the energy they brought. There is one moment, and you guys could probably hear it on the broadcast, where they said the "you suck."
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, Tyler heard that.
So the stadium was relatively quiet, and they actually pumped that through on the mics. That wasn't organic. They pumped it through. They were booing I think a card. They wanted a card for a Union player, or something happened down there, and that's actually what that was. So that's why one was drastically louder than the other ones.
Wow. Interesting. I mean, so in terms of the reception down there, I mean, listen, when fans come to Chester, I know they get an earful, but how are the Orlando fans to Philly fans down there?
It wasn't bad at all. I had no negative interactions. No one really, even in our section over there, which I wasn't in 101 with all the supporters. Oh God, something happened.
You're good. We
I
can
don't
still
know.
hear you. You're
Okay.
good.
101 was behind me. We were in 102, and there was like one guy there that started talking after they were up 2-0. So, apparently, the only insult they got is cheesesteaks.
Oh,
That we've been munching on too many cheesesteaks. To be fair, the players look like it was. I got to play devil's advocate. It was really hot today.
Yeah.
Even yesterday, it was like 90. The humidity was higher. I don't understand Florida. I think it exists in like a separate reality, but it was brutal. Like I'm sitting in the stand doing nothing at 8 p.m. and I am sweating.
Yeah.
So I will give the players devil's advocate there, but actually it was a really great experience. No one was negative. Security guard was over there. There was like one extra security guard. He was cool as hell. We actually had a great conversation at halftime. He's like, this is a good game defensively. I mean, I'm like, hey, listen, this is the try not to score derby, derby, and we're both losing.
How many fans end up making it out there with you guys?
There was a large contingent of like 20 or 30 up high in the official, like the supporter section. Yeah. And then I saw close to 50 or 60 separate fans. Like in every section of the stadium, lower and upper, you could find one or two. In fact, in the pregame, obviously there weren't a ton of Orlando City fans there, but they were doing like this, I don't know, they have like the screen and it does like filters over the faces.
Yeah.
And they had to zoom in around 2 Union fans to 2 Orlando City fans. And then as they panned past, there was 2 more Union fans on the broadcast.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, listen, the Eagles were just playing in Tampa, and they got their butt kicked as well. But there was a huge contingency of Eagles fans on there. So Philly fans just seem to travel to Florida in general really well. But listen, I'm going to let you talk about Union 2 a bit, because I know that's kind of, the hot team right now.
Yeah.
How you've been to a lot of their games. So for people who don't go to their games like myself, what can you share about the Union 2?
The easiest thing I could say, the thing I love about Union 2, besides the little supporters group, and shout out to the people who made that work, because I've never had more fun. They kind of have that energy that I'd always argue that we don't see with the Union right now. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm obviously a rather large man. So I was in, I think we were kind of like, I was hovering towards the outside of 104 when CJ only scored that game winner. I broke down the pitch. Like I haven't been this hyped in Subaru Park since November 2022. Oh, there it goes again.
No, you're good. We can still hear you.
Lots of energy. Listen, what Marlon LeBlanc is doing there is probably going to get overlooked. And I know people don't want to hear this sometimes, because even tonight for the first time, I really felt like the depth just like kind of what are we doing? But those kids go out, and I do say kids because most of them are kids, and they fight for the badge. They fight to win games. They never think they're out of it. They're competitive. They take the criticism on the cheek. And unfortunately, with the amount of people sometimes in the games, you hear every single time Marlon has something to say about one of the players. But there's almost no egos there right now. And again, I've never seen that team give up. Like the way they fight back is nuts.
Well, that's the thing, Vince. So Jose, I mean, I'm kind of going to bring it back to your point that you mentioned as well with Curtin. It just seems like Curtin is standing there watching this unfold, and there's no sort of energy behind it. Now, listen, Marlon, I know Jose's interviewed Marlon himself. Like he seems like a really great coach, a really great like just person overall. But it just seems like what they got cooking down Union 2 is just so much different. And listen, I mean, yeah, I know they're obviously in the standings higher than the first team. There's 2 clubs fighting for playoff spots, and it's so obvious which one wants it more, in my opinion. And I haven't even watched them more than a couple matches, and that's barely. But it's just, you can see it just from the way they play, the energy. It just seems like it's a different approach. And I'm not saying that Marlon should take over for Curtin, but my God, there's certain times I'm like, he brings out the best out of these players.
It is a different environment, and the wonderful reporting that we get, especially from the one team we agree on, Jillian and Kyle there, with their interviews with him, it is a learning environment. So you do hear him yelling at a lot of players. Like one of my favorite things was I went to one of the games last year, one or two of the games, and everyone would be like, well, why doesn't Nelson Pierre get time? And then you go there and all you hear Marlon yelling for 25 minutes is, Nelly, what? But it is a different environment. Like, it's going to be more aggressive, and we know Jim's a player's coach. The one thing I'll say is I'm always going to be on Jim's side.
Yeah,
I think I'm finally biting more into your guys' frustrations about the depth, because I heavily believe in the Union way. And if you do watch these kids play, of this next generation, if even 5 of them hit, hell, 3 of them, it's going to be crazy. Frankie Westfield is good.
Yeah,
He's gotten better. Kevin Sullivan, for all the hype, has gotten better. David Vasquez gets better every game, only gets better. Eddie Davis is a monster. Like, it's just, you see that even Makanya. I'm at the point where, what does that man have to do to get time?
absolutely.
But to your point, it's the energy. They fight like they're playing for something.
So let's segue into that. I think you mentioned that, and I'll bring some comments up too. It kind of blocks our faces, so to not block you, Vince, let me mention a few things.
You can block me, especially right down here.
So some people chime in, and I'll add some comments. And now people are saying missing the playoffs is actually the better result for the team. I actually agree with that 100%. I think it's.
I'm with you. Again, heat was insane. And I don't even know what's like on the pitch. And Alejandro Bedoya is older than me, but you could see the fatigue on him. And the issue, I think, right now with the team is that we can beat anyone on any given day, and we've shown it. But at a certain point, like, we shouldn't have to do that every game.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. Now, I'm going to bring another comment here. Jeffrey mentions, he said, I was just going to say one thing. I love that we were able to talk with the Union. I'm so happy that this podcast is. By the way, Jeffrey, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I saw the comment. I didn't want to ignore it. I appreciate everybody chiming in.
I'm a huge fan of this team, too. I'm a huge fan of all the work these guys do. And I say it to them on Twitter. But if you guys don't believe it, like, I have never seen a contingent. And I've gone to plenty of away games now. Like, the fact that I think it was Bedoya at the New York Red Bulls away game was like, you guys are all Philly. Like, you are elite. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, we appreciate that, Vince. And listen, and it's great to actually finally get to see you face to face on the show. I know you comment a bunch, so we always enjoy you coming and adding some extra commentary, because it really does make the show go a lot smoother for myself and as well as Jose and Todd. But Jose, I'll ask you first. Vince brings up a really good point. There's a lot of promising depth on Union 2 that's up and coming. I think overall we need to just gut this first team up. How much roster turnover are you looking at for this offseason at this point? After a game like tonight, which I know we're kind of reactionary, kind of saying that, I get it, but right now across the board, people are saying just blow this team up. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I wish I had a fancy calculator or some sort of module as I'm looking at the latest as of September 17 roster profile that the MLS PR put out, which, again, kudos to them for making this so transparent, as transparent as it's ever been. But just looking at some of the names from this roster that could hypothetically come off and yield a lot of added space in terms of cap and roster space. People are not going to want to hear it, but I don't know that Alejandro Bedoya comes back. I think he'll play. Yeah. Is it in Philadelphia? I don't know. He wants to play, obviously, has been open about it. Hamir Berdesio, I don't know that the loan has worked out the way that they intended. I think they were expecting probably a lot more growth from him. And really where he's fortunate is that he has a green card. Not a green card, I'm sorry. I think is it a green card? I can't remember. I know his sister lives in New York City. She's a professional dancer out there. So I'm not sure what the connection is that he's able to be in the States and not qualify as an international slot. And just looking on down, and sort of wonder if the Union sort of kicked themselves for giving Chris Donovan, sorry, Vince, but giving Chris Donovan a brand new contract, right? It's very true. And again, keep just continuing on down. Leon Flock, I don't think he comes back. I think he goes off.
Janice doesn't want him here, so there you go. Janice will drive him to the airport. So.
And he will be a free agent as well, should he go anywhere. I'll wait through Macania. I'm not sure what happens with him. Obviously, he's got a contract through 2025 and options. Matt Real, I think he gets gutted as well.
Mm-hmm.
Joaquin Torres, I don't know if there's a gentleman's agreement between them and the Chilean team for his transfer after the season. I'm most intrigued about what happens with Brandon Craig. Holden Trent, I don't know that he gets his option picked up for 2025, let alone 2026, considering he's featured this many minutes for the first team and can hardly stay healthy. And then the rest are just, I mean, Nick Cariano, I think, is going to be a Union 2 player, maybe for his life. Nelson Pierre, I don't know what happens with him. I think he's on a homegrown. Yeah, he's a homegrown player. So, yeah, man, I mean, just talking those names out loud, I just freed up a ton of cap space just off of those names alone.
Jeffrey mentions that if we somehow make the playoffs and beat Miami, is that like our championship win?
Wait, hold on. I got to tell you guys something.
Go
I
ahead.
said the most Union thing possible is that we get in as the 9 seed, upset someone, knock out Miami, and crash out. And then I said we knock Miami out of the playoffs 2024 banner.
Little banner. Put it right next to
That-
Sebastian
that
Lagu's name.
Leagues Cup.
That would get the playoff model changed really quick.
Certainly would.
I do want to throw it over to Todd. Todd, as we look at the senior roster here, names that you see, obviously this is a lot of knee-jerk reaction from me specifically, but also sort of calculated as I've sort of spoken about this with both Mike and Todd in the background as well.
So we asking if I was Ernst Tanner, what would I do, or what would I think the Union are going to do?
Give me a mix of both, considering you have a red pen in front of you and you're about to strike names off of that sheet.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think the Union, and if I was Ernst Tanner, I'm not bringing back Sam Dinron. Yeah, he's not costing a lot of money, $93,000 this season, and guaranteeing comp. He hasn't done anything to prove that he deserves to be back. And there was the whole reason, and I don't know how much fans pay attention to why he was out here to Philadelphia in the first place, but he wanted to go to Europe. St. Louis weren't getting any good offers from teams in Europe, and they didn't want to lose him on a free. And so instead of letting him go on a free, they got a little bit of game from the Philadelphia Union, and it's better to get something than nothing. So, yeah, I definitely want to bring back a dinner on. Holden Trent, yeah, you talked about him, Jose. I mean, he's a fourth string goalkeeper. His option is not going to be picked up.
Well, let me ask something real quick though, because we're talking about contracts. There's 3 names that we've mentioned kind of in passing right here.
Clark, Bedoya.
No, we talked about Chris Donovan, we talked about Macania, and I guess really haven't talked about Bueno, but we're talking about Bueno now. We have 3 players that we've just given contracts to, and yet they're not seeing the field. Like Bueno saw 45 seconds today. I mean, along with what you're talking about now, I'll let you kind of continue. Are you surprised also that Flock and Bueno basically saw no time today, considering the magnitude of the match? But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I know Jim Curtin said after the game, he was asked, are you concerned about these guys playing too many minutes? Do you feel like they're running out of steam? And Jim said, no, that's not an excuse. But you look at all the games, I don't have in front of me. I could pull it up here in a second. How many games that Liam Flock's played consecutively? I mean, of course, you want to give these guys a break and whatnot. So, I mean, I'm not surprised that Leon didn't play tonight. And I think we'll start to see, honestly, Leon's time start to dwindle down a little bit. So, because they were just waiting for Danley to get healthy. I mean, he was great against New York Red Bulls, and I don't think Danley's a 6, but I think that he plays a 6 better than Leon Flock does. I think Leon's a much better 8 than he is a lone 6. And again, Leon's told us plenty of times in the locker room that, he prefers to play with another 6 as opposed to the lone 6, but he can do it in a pinch. He'll do whatever the team needs, blah, 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 blah. But I'm not surprised that Liam Flock didn't play tonight. Jesus Bueno is an interesting case for me. I mean, this is a guy who lit the world on fire. I mean, what he did in Leagues Cup last season is exactly why he got the contract extension, and he was getting those call-ups with the Venezuelan national team. And Jose put out the tweet, Jesus Bueno not even called up for the next call-up for Venezuela, which I think doesn't bode well for him. I think that tells you how far down he is in the depth chart with Venezuela, and you feel bad for him where he was it seemed like at the peak of his career, just playing consistently, scoring massive goals for the Union. And, we were talking about Union too. What players could come up from Union 2 that could be impact guys. Look, Jesus Bueno didn't start with Union. He went down Union 2, grinded out down there, scored a hell of a lot of goals, and then got the minutes with the first team, and then just didn't look back during the League Cup. But for whatever reason, this season just can't find consistent playing time. And so that's a strange one for me. And I know Jim Kirchin said in the past, and this is just coach talk, he's like, yeah, a lot of midfields, Jeremy Raffanello, Jesus Bueno would be in those midfields. But I don't know. I mean, the Jesus Bueno situation is just so weird to me. I think he's a good player, but you started out talking about Quinn Sullivan. It's like, how do you not start Quinn Sullivan? 3 assists in the last 3 games or whatever it was. Well, you're obviously not playing Jesus Bueno over him. You're not playing Jesus Bueno over Jack McGlynn. I think Jack McGlynn's been inconsistent. I think still, even at his worst, he's better than Jesus Bueno in my opinion. But Jim prefers Leon Flock over Jesus Bueno at the 6. I mean, I don't know. It's an interesting case for me. But going back to the original point, I mean, Bedoya, I don't know. I mean, we've talked about this so many times. I do think Bedoya comes back to the Union next season. I don't think he comes back for the $425,000. Does that sound about right, Jose? What he was making this year? $450,000. Oh God,
423, I believe.
Was it? I'm looking at it right here. It says 449.
Wait, real quick. I had Frank's question. Did Curtin explain why Baribo was subbed out? Did this get addressed in the presser or no?
Nah, but I think Baribo had a terrible game. I mean,
it just wasn't working. I don't think.
So it wasn't working. Vince, someone asked you a question. We're talking about players, different stuff like that. What have you thought so far about Danley, and what have you thought so far about Sam Adeniran? Because I feel like fans feel very opposite about those 2 players. I'm kind of curious what you think, because they're basically our newest additions here.
So when they announced Sam, and I know it wasn't like the big splash anyone was looking for, but I've seen what this guy is like his potential. So I was on because St. Louis fans were like, good luck, he doesn't do anything, this and that. And I'm like, guys, he has the potential. Jim Curtin gets the best out of players. Good Lord, if that man sees another minute before Chris Donovan, I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah.
I know how everyone feels about Donovan too. I get it. But he just, I don't know what it is. He just doesn't work. And I think one of the things, so going back to the town hall, Ty Bariba was brought in because they thought they were going to sell Julian Carranza.
Right.
And then we're like, why doesn't he get minutes? And he kind of fits that same mold as Carranza. So in the same way, we usually see Adeniran come in for Uwa because that's your speed guy.
Right.
But I want to give him time and stuff, but it's at a certain point you got to start blaming the players for their performances. We can't blame the coaches and the roster building there on the field. Danley came in like a bat out of hell in that first game, and I loved that energy. Hasn't duplicated it. He's been like solid. I'd say he's not blowing the world up since that first game when he made that crazy run tackle. Today he was not very good.
And somebody mentioned as well, Danley was like, where's Waldo? Like, where did he go out there? But maybe to Todd's point, maybe he's out of position. But go ahead, Vince. I'll let you finish up.
Well, it's like we always struggle when we bring in a player from overseas at this time of the year. So at this point, I don't see any problem with playing him. I'm in the Flock fan club. I actually think that man at the price we pay him is probably the best value on this squad, and he doesn't get near the credit he deserves for what he does. But to your points about players, what we kind of needed, especially once we stabilized a little bit in that, I'd say late in the first half, is we needed somebody to say, none of this is working. I need to take a shot from 50 yards away and energize the team. And we don't have that player anymore. Danley tried it, I think it was like last week. It might have been that home game. I just, at this point, I don't know if there's anything we can do. From the roster building side, I'm actually kind of on the opposite. I think one of our biggest issues, and I'm sorry, a lot of this is based on Football Manager too. So if any of you guys know something I don't, but like Alejandro Bedoya is on a special program for player development and coaches. So
Right.
I don't know if he hits the roster at that full amount or if it's like a fixed amount. The homegrowns hit at a lower amount. Flock, again, I think is kind of underpaid. Donovan got more money, but I don't think it's killing us. What kills us is we go into the season and all the TAM gets eaten up by the 4 or 5 players that are on TAM.
Mm-hmm.
And then we need to use all of our GAM to pay down other players who aren't TAM players who are above the budget charge. So unfortunately, what I think from a roster building perspective is that if we're going to cut the weight, it's going to have to come from that top end. And if Union 2 could make a run, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, I think Makanya deserves a shot, but Neil Pierre is really good. Like,
I've heard a lot
really
of
insanely good for his age, his size. Like, he made a crazy run in the Union 2 game. It actually was funny because Marlon's like, I felt bad because I had to yell at him because he ran so far out of position. But he's one of those guys that, and again, some of these center backs, left back Kai Wagner, I can't even imagine how many games that man's played in 2 years. 100? Like
endless.
And you're watching these guys try and outrun, substitutes, like a guy like Muriel who comes in. So I think we're going to have to change that roster kind of at that point. I just don't know what the team does moving forward.
Well, I think one of the things we've also mentioned a few times, and as I'm bringing some comments up, again, Todd said Leon prefers to be on the 8. He seems like he's out of position. He prefers to have two people to 6. We've mentioned Quinn Sullivan being played out of position. We've talked about Nathan Harrell maybe being out of position. Maybe he's better off as a center back. We've kind of said this issue. Even McGlynn maybe not fitting the system entirely.
Yes.
I feel like this has been such a problem. We have a lot of players that are really good. But it seems like every year we say, yeah, but this person doesn't really fit this system. He's out of place here. And I don't know if that's coaching. I don't know if that's Ernst Tanner or ownership not wanting to deviate from what they're currently in place. And that's I guess probably more to Eric's point about the cynicism that he has. It's like, yeah, you can go out and get players, but are you going to trust that they're going to be playing in the right spot? Like, I don't think Danley should be in the 6. I think he should be on the side with Quinn, in Quinn's spot or on the left, just considering his athletic ability and his speed. And I thought the same about Jose Martinez. Go ahead.
Jack McGlynn obviously was coming up in the system, I believe, I think that was when Ernie Stewart was still there. He is the perfect Medunian 6, right?
Yeah.
Quinn Sullivan is phenomenal at right wing, and those are a few of the players that we kept. Leon Flock, I'm going back to 2022, and I'm sorry, I know he was injured most of last year. Like, in 2022, when he played that left center mid, he led the league in every box-to-box stat. He was like better statistically than every box-to-box player. So I get why he'd prefer it there because he's at his best.
Sure.
I know, Todd, you've said this before, that the formation shouldn't matter, and I agree. I think the only issue is that we play differently tactically when we're in different formations. And that's what causes a lot of our issues. But what they're doing right now with the right center mid with Quinn Sullivan, like, I love it. He's getting forward. Now the challenge comes in, who's going to cover that gap? Jose Martinez covered it. Like, let's be real. That man's a saint. Like, the way he covered ground. Leon Flock covers that ground. But one of the things I noticed today, even when Quinn came in, you saw those holes appearing. And I'll be honest, Andre Blake, this game probably should have been 11-0. Like, Andre Blake single-handedly saved like 5 goals. I don't know what the XG was, but it should have been higher.
It's like 2 point, was it? We said 2.4 or something like that. I think Jose mentioned it earlier.
2.8 to 2.
There you go. So you're right. It should have been.
Yeah, that feels unfair to Andre Blake.
And that's eventually what I think we're relying so much on him just being a superhuman, robotic, brick wall, that we've realized when he's gone how many holes there are on this roster.
It showed you in the summertime defensively, and I mean, you even saw it again tonight. I mean, nothing's changed that much in my opinion with the defense. There's still endless amount of mistakes. They're not great 1v1 defenders. They're constantly ball watching. They're constantly getting beat off the dribble. The only difference is, instead of Andrew Rick and Oliver Zemla, no offense to those guys, they're not Andre Blake. And so you have an Andre Blake to bail you out. And so this season, yes, as terrible as it's been, it shows you every reason why the most important Philadelphia Union player over the last 5, 6, 7 years has been Andre Blake. Because without Andre Blake, you're a bottom of the half team in MLS. You're barely a playoff team. They honestly shouldn't even be a playoff team. But because Andre Blake saves you so many points a single season, you always have a chance in every single game.
And that's another thing right here. Not a fan of the diamond. It no longer fits our player. So Jose, a lot of talk. I know. How about you? Do you think the diamond is a thing of the past next year? Do you think we see something revolutionary from the Union, or do we somehow get 6 points in these next 2 weeks and beat Miami?
I mean, I'm maybe leaning more, and I know this is awful. It's because taking my press hat off for a second. Like, this is a team I genuinely care about. Like
Sure.
I enjoy covering them, and I have enjoyed supporting them and watching them or whatever. But I'm also like I'm level-headed enough and not naive enough to think that this team is really going to do much in the playoffs should they get in. So to me, what's most interesting is, and I think Vince sort of alluded to it in terms of the town hall, at least dropping that idea that it happened, is that the best thing to come out of that whole thing is not that the voices were heard, and yes, that's wonderful, but that the voices of leadership were captured under a microphone and camera, where there's no smoke and mirrors anymore. They caught the right folks that make decisions, that hold the purse strings to say, if Jim and Ernst want it, we'll try to find a way, or whatever it came down to, the wording of it. And God, I got to clip that, Todd. Remind me when I get a chance to just have it prepared for the end of season work. But that's the best thing to come out of this season, is just getting that on record. And that's not even soccer associated. That doesn't even have to deal with some of the very, very highs, like that Portland win away when everybody else was away for international duty.
That was a historic performance, but go
right
ahead.
Or the lowest of lows, like losing to Pachuca out in Mexico. What was it, 6-0 that game?
Or the Miami game where we were down up 2 men.
That's just it. So it's been an interesting season. It's obviously not over. I hope that they're able to do something, but the reality is, maybe it is for the best for them to just sort of start incorporating some of these other guys in different ways. And that won't happen until they're mathematically gone. We all know that. And I acknowledge that that's the right thing to do, as Jim Curtin as a coach for his job and his sake. But I also do wonder, as Vince sort of talks about the top end of the pyramid, I fully don't expect Jack McLean to come back next year. And I also don't expect that Nelson Pierre will ever feature for the first team, not because he's not capable, but because he's too capable to be within the Union system. And sure, Kevin is here and will be here for whatever this ticking time bomb foreseeable future type of situation that he's in before he bounces off to Europe. But I have zero desire to see Neil Pierre play for the Philadelphia Union, just because I genuinely think he's too good and he should be somewhere else doing a lot better things, which again gives me a little bit of agita thinking about what does this team, how does it retool in a healthy way with so many pieces already here, and maybe giving some guys contract extensions and maybe more team friendly deals, like this someone like hold on, let me pull this up again. Quinn Sullivan maybe becomes a U22 player and you pay him what he deserves at a much better budget rate of 200 or 250 depending his age. Maybe you pay him somewhere between Luna and himself, and that's a huge gap. Actually, that's about $500,000. So why not have him hit at a different spot? But let's not forget about Jack Elliott. He's only guaranteed through this year with an option for 2025. Ernst Tanner, if you were to ask him today, which, by the way, I don't believe he's had his yearly roundtable with the right people, and I don't know if he will, considering this late into the season. He has an option for 2025, so they're going to pick it up. But do they run him all the way to the end of that deal, or does he get on a more team-friendly deal that avoids him using I guess he's a TAM player, right? Yeah, he's a TAM player. So do they find a way to make him free up that money and extend him, considering that from what I had heard, there was interest between Lowe and Elliott for a move. Lowe was the one that made the more sense to the Union, so he went, and they stuck around with Elliott. So whether that's completely true, I'm not sure. That's what I had heard. I never reported because I wasn't too sure about it. But then Lowe happened, and it's kind of like, oh shit, maybe that source is right because he's off to Saudi Arabia making a hell of a lot more money, I'm sure. I just wonder what happens with Elliott, right?
So something I do want to jump in here. I mean,
Yeah.
so just because the Union chose to move on from Damian Lowe instead of Jack Elliott, and this is my opinion, I still think you should move on from Jack Elliott. I mean, you've run the same center backs back since 2020 and Jacob Blessis and Jack Elliott. I was just talking about it. I mean, they've not looked great all season long defensively. No. They get beat too easily 1v1. The only difference is you have Andre Blake saving you. You've got to freshen things up in the back. Yes, you're going to, in my opinion, get another number 6 in here. I don't believe that's Stanley. I think we'll see Danley slot out to the left. To your point, Jose, Jack McGlynn, you don't think he's going to be back next season. I tend to lean in that same camp.
Today did not help.
No. It's not us sitting here saying, oh, Jack McGlynn's not good enough for the Union. He's too good for the Union. And so I do think that we see Danley slot up further in the midfield, which I think's a more than capable role for him. I think that's actually where he's better suited for. I mean, look, tonight we've seen even more line splitting passes and just how quick he is with transitions, winning the ball back and then wanting to go attack. That's exactly what this Union needs. And I think they've kind of went away from this. I think I've had people text me in the past say, they think that Quinn Sullivan slows down the attack too much. I think Daniel Gazak slows down the attack too much. You got to get better midfielders in here. Midfielders that want to go quick, win that ball back and just hit on the transition. Because why were the Union so successful in 2019 to 2020 with Brendan Aronson? It's because this guy's winning the ball back for the Union. As soon as they win the ball, it's attack. And that's why they look so good in the midfield with him and Jamiro Montero. And then Jamiro wanted to play as a 10, and the Union said, look, we have Daniel Gazak in here. He's our 10, not you, Jamiro. And so they move him from Jamiro Montero. But if you can get more midfielders in, like a Jamiro Montero, like a Brendan Aronson, where these guys are going to win the ball back quickly for you, and within 5 seconds, they go from defense to offense, and now you're in for a chance. I think that's exactly what this team needs. They got to get quicker. And I think that was a big difference tonight we saw with Orlando City against the Union, with the front three of Orlando, just how quick they were with Enrique, with Torres, with Ojeda, with Maguire when he came on. I mean, he absolutely burnt the Union's back line once. Morial played that ball into him, and he was off to the races, and nobody was stopping him. And Andre Blake, unfortunately, wasn't able to save that one. So, I mean, I do want to see the Union next season focus on more speed.
Yeah, I feel like they went with basically the same pairing of McGlynn and Bedoya that we saw against Columbus. And we said the same exact thing against Columbus. Like, they just look slow. It looked like they were just always a half step behind or 2 steps behind, whatever. And it's just kind of been that way all season.
I was drunk to remember that game.
What?
I'm like going through my head, like, what happened at Columbus again? I forgot. I was at the wedding.
We got embarrassed at Columbus.
Yeah.
We have.
All right. Yeah, the one thing I do want to mention, Mike, before we move on, or as we maybe start thinking about wrapping up, whatever.
Yeah.
For everybody and anybody who is thinking that Kevin's going to be the savior next year, that he's going to be somebody who slots in from the get-go, just be thoughtful and be careful. He is just turned 15, I believe. I'm intrigued to see what his body looks like, not in a weird way, but like, at 15, okay, at 15, 6 months is a huge amount of time, dude, where like so much he could grow 6 inches for all we know in terms of height, right? So like, what does he look like? Obviously, physically and mentally, what is he going to do? I genuinely do not believe that he is the answer next year, considering how the season has unfolded this year and all the needs that the team has. That relying on a 15-year-old to be the savior is just not feasible or like a viable option whatsoever.
But Jose, didn't you see that goal he scored this weekend with Union too? He's the savior for this first team.
Apparently, I'm the savior according to Collins. So that's. Go ahead, Jose.
No, I just wanted to put that out there because I think as we get closer and closer to what might be inevitable in terms of playing Columbus and Cincinnati in these next 2 games, I think it might just become very obvious this Saturday, actually. in terms of what happens with the union. And I've actually been dreading getting that email from MLS where they sort of walk through the, teams that can qualify and teams that can get mathematically eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just been dreading scrolling down, looking for who can possibly get eliminated, and just like not seeing the union. It's like, oh, okay, get to breathe another week before we start thinking about end of season questions for Curtin and Tanner, which are the most like nerve wracking in a way. But I think after this weekend, I think we'll have a very, very good idea of what happens.
If
Vince,
they lose this weekend, they're done.
Yeah.
Vince, where did you get that hat? Since Jeffrey,
It was in the union shop last year. Actually, I have to have my outfits color coordinate, including my shoes, like down to the thing. It actually took me a while to go with different shoes. So when I found this hat, I'm like, oh my god, they actually have this hat. It was like late. I don't know what Fanatic. We can get on that forever. I don't know what they do with the union, but they release stuff at weird times. So this is a Fanatics hat. They had it last year. I only saw it in I want to say September, and there weren't many there, and I just scooped it up while I saw it. I don't even know if they make it anymore.
you.
But they also never seem to even have inventory left of our jerseys from the previous year that are being cycled out. But we never sell enough to get a third kit because magic. I don't know.
The shoes.
Did you have the shoes? Do you have the matching shoes or no?
I am not getting my shoes right now. They're over there. My feet hurt so much. I've walked a lot.
That's a fair comment. So listen, 2 games left. I feel like if this was the Eagles or Phillies or Sixers or any other credible franchise, we'd be saying if they do not make the playoffs, the coach is out. That is not going to be the case. I feel like I think we all agree the curtain's coming back next year. Regardless, I'm not very optimistic with Columbus and Cincinnati ahead of us. I don't think we win both matches. I think we might get 1 point out of these next 2. I think that's being optimistic. But I'm going to just end here, the show here. We're kind of wrapping up. It's almost been an hour now. So, Todd, I'll go to you first. Final thought on this game, this season, this night, and also any content that you have pushing out.
Yeah, I do got to get content and push out. It's been 2 episodes that I haven't done a podcast, so definitely got to get a podcast for these people. But hey, look, it's not my fault that the internet sucked down south when I was on vacation last week, and then for not doing an Atlanta podcast, yeah, that's on me. I was like, I don't feel like doing it, but yeah, I'll record my thoughts on this Orlando City versus Philadelphia Union match, goals breakdown video. I'll do a preview article for the upcoming game against Columbus. I'll be in Columbus this Saturday with Kyle and Jillian from the One Team We Agree On. So final home game of the season. Looking forward to going to my 9th MLS stadium, I believe that is now. So slowly but surely making our way through the league. And so looking forward to checking out lower.com field. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to add to this game. It's disappointing. I told you off air, Mike. More disappointed with what happened with the Orioles and what happened with Union. I expected the Union to lose tonight against Orlando City.
Yeah.
What happened to the Orioles in the playoffs, heartbreaking, and I'll cheer for you guys from afar.
Listen, I mean, go Phils. Jose, how about yourself? Anything coming on the Substack? Anything in the works on Twitter? Anything like that?
I just want to say there is a world where the Union can finish in 14th place, or worse yet if they go winless these last 2 games, because New England has I believe 2 more games to go, or maybe 3 to go. So yeah, there's a world where the Union stays static at 37 and finish near the bottom of the table, right above the Chicago Fire, who are obviously already eliminated. So obviously, we hope that doesn't happen. In terms of content, nothing immediate, just sort of reporting as things come up. But I'm fairly confident that folks like Vince will be very, very happy to hear some news at some point later this week in terms of some really good international call-ups from players that I think he cares about deeply. So really, really exciting stuff. I believe that will be announced sooner rather than later if my sources are right. But we'll see what happens, man. Columbus, I wish Todd a lot of luck in terms of getting some good coverage out there, and hopefully players that actually want to speak should things not go well.
Yes. Good luck, Todd. Vince, thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate it. Obviously, a safe home trip. Now, are you going to be going to the Union 2 game? Anything like that coming up?
The playoff game, yes.
Okay.
I can't go to the Chicago away game. I wanted so we basically had to make a decision. It was either going to be take a trip to Orlando or try and do like Columbus and Chicago because I wanted to see SeatGeek Stadium, and we settled on Orlando because the flights for the other one were crazy. I do want to thank you guys for having me on. If you guys ever need me, I know I ramble, so that's probably why Jose didn't get to talk so much for the comments. I just
we needed a break from Jose anyway, so go ahead.
The one thing I will say is I love these players, and it almost hurts me sometimes to say like anything mean about them, like how could I be mean to the greatest MLS Cup goal scorer of all time, Jack Elliott, with 2 goals? I believe he's tied for the most in one of those games.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that if this is how it ends this way. But these players, what they did in 2022 and 2023, deserve this chance. I hope Jim Curtin stays here. I actually think he's a great coach. Union's going to have to do a little bit more thinking about what they're doing on the back end. Listen, for all of you out there, follow these people if you don't already. They are great. They are amazing content creators. I love watching it. And thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thanks, Vince. Much appreciated. And again, safe flight, and thanks for joining us again. All right, everybody, across the pitch, maybe post-game show next Saturday, and we'll ride the season out as best we can. Go Union. Go Phils.